Hey everyone, Lauren from A Girl and Her Wool here. So I'm really excited to be filming this today. I'm going to be doing a project recap video today of everything that I'm working on, and I haven't done this in 3 weeks, I think. I think I skipped 2 weeks. And you'll see why in a bit, but I'm really excited to be doing it again today. I'm going to kind of just fill you in on all of my active WIPs. Doesn't matter how much progress I've made it on them, but everything that I've kind of worked on a little bit these last few weeks I'm going to talk through. So if you haven't seen them before, you'll get to see them. Otherwise, you haven't seen them in a while, so figured I'd remind you of everything I'm working on and tell you some fun stories along the way. So I think there are 3 projects that I'll show you. 2 of them you've definitely seen. One was on my cast-on party, I think. I must have talked about it in the next project video, but I actually started working on it this week, and so yeah, let's get into it. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the main project that I've been working on. I would say for these last few weeks, up until a few days ago, I have been working just monogamously on this one project, and it's because when I last recorded, I was just about getting to the point where I was just about done with it and I wanted to just finish it. But then things happened and it didn't work out. So anyway, without further ado, this is my painting brick shawl, and I can't, it's so big that you won't see all of it, but you get the idea of it here. It is a Stephen West pattern, and just to kind of show what it kind of looks like, you get these rectangles offset, kind of, they're bricks as bricks get laid, and I used a gradient set. So this is my Neon Unicorn gradient set, which goes from that deep turquoise into kind of the lighter turquoise, and then into a hot pink, which I'm not all done with the pink yet, but getting there. And then so that's my Neon Unicorn set. And then the main color is my colorway called Denim, which is a tonal blue. And I can show what that looks like here. So it's just a tonal denim blue. And yeah, they're both on my sock base, which is a merino nylon blend. So here's what happened with this shawl. So I was working on it, and when you last saw it, I think I was just about to get to the border. So the body has these laid bricks, and then the border is just, I think, 4 kind of rows. And when I call rows, I mean repeats. So like 4 strips of the bricks in a chevron pattern. And so when I last recorded, we'll start there, I was very close to that. But what happened was, the way this shawl works, so it's a crescent shaped shawl, and you can see at the top I have a lot of the darker blues going on. I mean, most of the shawl is pretty much the blue, and we just get into the pinks down here. And that's because the rows start off very short and they get very long at the end. So I've talked about this before, and I didn't do the pattern as is. That the way the pattern is set up is you would do each row of bricks in a different color and then cut your contrast color, then do a new one, cut it, and he cycles through kind of the rainbow. Okay, so as I was saying, you do 1 row of bricks in a color, cut it, do another row of bricks in a color and cut it. So since I was going through the gradient, I decided to do 1 long gradient instead. So I didn't do it that way. And what I decided when I got to the border the first time is I really cut a lot of the blue short, so that way it wasn't all blue. Like, I really was trying to somewhat control it. My cat got to this. You can see it. It'll block out, right? Anyway, so I cut a lot of the blue short, figuring that I'd use more of the pink yarn, less of the blue yarn, to kind of even it out just a little bit. But what I was realizing was I didn't use enough of the blue and I was gonna run out of yarn. In a normal situation, I probably wouldn't have cared and I could have done, one less row of the border. But since, this is really technically going to be a shop sample, I really like to do patterns as is, which is funny because we'll come back to that. And I didn't want to have a shop sample and say, yes, here's the kit for it. Oh, by the way, you're going to have to do one row less. Like, I didn't want to sell a kit that wouldn't have had enough yarn. So, even though it did, it's just the way I cut the yarn. So anyway, I ended up ripping back to like the third blue. So I really ripped back maybe more than half of the shawl, like all the way back up. And I re-knit it again using more of the blue. So you do get more of the blue. The pink really does start pretty low down in the shawl. And again, to me, that's okay. When you wear it, it'll still all show, and I really did want to get the true pattern done, which again, we'll come back to. So anyway, so after I recorded, I ripped back more than half the shawl and re-knit it. So we got to the next Wednesday for my knitting project recap, and I was going to show you the one shawl that I had worked on all week, and it was going to be in the exact same spot that it was in the week before. I was like, I can't do that. So now, after that week, I was like, okay, we'll get it done for next week and we'll show it next week. So here I was working on it. And what I came to realize, so I started the border, got to the border, started working on it, and realized that the chevron was driving me crazy. So I was just getting really frustrated with where the increases versus the decreases were. Because the shawl itself is still increasing. So some of the rows had all increases and some of the rows were still the increase and decrease, and I was messing it up a lot. I was knitting a row and having to undo it and knitting a row and having to undo it, and it was just driving me mad. So I think maybe because of that, I kind of justified this, but I also realized that this is essentially where the chevron started, so kind of where I'm back to now. And so you get into the pink, you do a few rectangles of the pink, and then, so you do a few rows of the pink, you get into the rectangles of the pink, and then it starts a chevron. And the way that his pattern is set up is, you have the body of the shawl with all the rectangles and then the chevron border, but he starts his repeats again there, and it kind of creates a nice separation between the border and the body. And I felt like with the gradient, just randomly kind of starting the chevron, it didn't have that same separation. And so I think because the chevron was driving me crazy, and because of the fact that, the chevron kind of just picked up in the midst of the pink, I just didn't love the border. So, long story short, I am just finishing this body of the shawl without a border. I am going to just continue with the rectangles, which is what I'm doing. Technically, I'm past the body of the shawl. I'm kind of just making it up now. I'm following the kind of recipe of the pattern and doing my own thing, but this would have been a chevron. And I am just going to finish up the gradient with the rectangles and do it like that. Again, I'm kind of going against my rule that my sample needs to be the pattern, but I think it will show off the gradient beautifully, which in the end is what I'm trying to do. And it'll just be what it will be. I have to enjoy my knitting too. So anyway, that has been the 3-week adventure of my shawl. So again, I am technically showing it to you pretty close to where it was 3 weeks ago, but a lot has happened since then, and I think it's fun to share those stories, especially because the shawl will end up different than the pattern, and it's nice to kind of show some of that along the way. So that being said, I don't think you'll see this next week on my WIP video. I do think the next time you see it will be on a Faux Friday post, and me putting that out there is me having to get it done. So yeah, I talked a lot about it today, so I won't talk about the rest of it until that Faux Friday post where I'll kind of give the whole overhaul of it. stitches just fell off the needles. So we're gonna put this away and move on to the next. Oh look, we have 2 kitties now. That won't last. So the next project I'm gonna show you is, again, another project that you've seen before. This is my Drachenfels shawl, and again, for a while I wasn't I wasn't working on this. I was really trying to power through the painting brick shawl that I just talked about for a long time. And so I really didn't work on this a lot, but I have in the last week. And so it might not look too different from what you've seen before, but I do want to refresh, because I think even on the most recent WIP videos, I didn't share this project. So anyway, this is my Drachenfels shawl, and I'll try to hold it up as best as I can. So this is a pattern by Melanie Berg. Sorry, Pepe. I'm using Suburban Stitcher yarn. It's the single sock base, which is a single ply superwash merino yarn. The 3 colors that I'm using is this dark navy blue, which is called Darkest Hour. The coral is called Clementine, and the cream neutral is called Sweet Adeline. And I have finished up the striping of the shawl. So I did a whole lot of striping for a while, and you probably can't tell, but I've done about 2 rows of I think it's the last section before the border. It's just going to be garter stitch of color C, so that lightest color that I have. That will go on for quite a while, and then there's a little border that is a similar pattern, I think, to what I was doing earlier. And so again, this is my reading project. So I work on this while I'm reading. So over the weekend, we had some nice weather. I forget if it was Saturday. I think it was Sunday afternoon. I kind of had finished things up. It was Sunday afternoon because I didn't make it to my weekly sit and stitch because I was having Zoom problems. But I ended up sitting outside for quite a while and just enjoyed the peace and quiet, and was reading a book and knitting on this. So that's when I finished up those stripes and kind of started the next section. So again, this is something that I don't have pressure to work on. I kind of just work on it usually for about 30 minutes in the morning. I read for a little bit before starting my work day. I don't know why that's hanging out there. Starting my work day, and I'm just going through it. So the rows grow each time, but it's just straight garter stitch, so I don't mind it. And I have overall enjoyed this. The yarn is beautiful, and it's just a good garter stitch squishy shawl. I love the colors together, and I wouldn't change anything about it. I think I've talked in the past about how technically I did the colors differently than the pattern did, but I seriously would not change how I did this. So that is the next one. You haven't seen that in a while, but did work on it and wanted to remind you that it's still there. I haven't forgotten about it. So the last project I'm going to show you is a pair of socks that I am working on. This is the Magnolia socks pattern, which is a pattern by Helen Stewart. Her brand is Curious Handmade. I'm just putting the extra DPN away. So this is the pattern. It's again, the Magnolia socks. It was from the Handmade Sock Society Season 1. And the yarn that I'm using is my hand-dyed yarn. It's called Golden Hour, and it's on my newest base, my BFL base. So you can kind of see how it knits up there. And if you haven't seen my BFL base, it's much sturdier than the regular sock base in that it's BFL. It's also a high twist base. So moving forward, for the most part, this is probably what I will be knitting socks out of. And I mean, I probably will still knit out of the other base for socks for samples and things, but I do recommend this base for socks. They're definitely soft and they'll just hold up more, but if you are ultra sensitive, definitely the sock base has nylon content in it, so it works very well for socks too. So anyway, I cast these on as part of my cast on party a few weeks ago. So if you didn't see that, I kind of just did a sit and chat, knit and chat. I just did a knit and chat and cast on a whole bunch of projects. So if I ever needed one, it was cast on and ready to go, and I didn't have to find the needles. I didn't have to wind the yarn, didn't have to cast on. So for socks, I got the toes done on the socks. So I was getting a little burnt out on my painting brick shawl. As you can imagine, I have basically knitted 3 times at this point. It feels like, at least. And I wanted to grab another project that wasn't quite a vanilla project, but wasn't too crazy either. So I took out these socks, and because the toe was done, I just had to look up the pattern and get going on it, which was great. I really think that worked out well. I probably, in that moment, if I hadn't done this, I probably just wouldn't have knit, because I really just didn't feel like working on the painting brick shawl. And honestly, in that moment, I don't think I would have had the patience to wind yarn, cast on, I just wouldn't. So the cast on party really did work, and as I finish projects, I plan to do that again. So stay tuned for those. But anyway, again, like I mentioned, this is from the Handmade Sock Society Season 1. If you caught my most recent Faux Friday, I finished the Honeybee Dance socks. And I knit those also from the Season 1. So this is the last pattern that I will knit from it. It's the 5th out of 6, and I don't plan to knit the 6th one. But I will go back and redo some others, I'm sure. And you can hear me talk more about that in that kind of Faux Friday post. But the Magnolia sock pattern is actually in some ways similar. It also has cable design down the side, and it just has this lace pattern in the middle. There's not two, actually there's like 2 sets of cables along the outside and then that one in the middle. I think I needed 2 repeats of the pattern to have it down pat, and now I can just take it and go. I took this in the car with me yesterday when we were just doing some various curbside pickup errands. And so these are kind of a good take with me. The painting brick shawl is just large at this point, and so this has been kind of my take around if I need something smaller to work on. And I've been enjoying it. I think I'm moving away from knitting monogamously like I have been, just because while it's nice to make a lot of progress on something and finish them, it's also nice to change it up and keep the knitting fun. So I'm almost at the heel for this sock, so probably by next week that should be done, depending on how committed I am to the painting brick shawl. And so much for me saying I'm not going to be knitting socks, because I seem to always be knitting socks. You just can't beat how easy they are to pick up and work on. They're just not bulky. They just go quick. You can't get away from them. You try and they keep coming back. So those are the 3 projects I wanted to share with you. Again, I really haven't been spinning, and it's hard. I really want to, and I do, and I don't force these things. This is all supposed to be fun, and I think that we work on the things we want to when we want to, and when we don't, we'll come back to them. So it's still there. It's just so funny to me because I'm still on my very first braid. I've been working on this thing for years. I'm not even a spinner. Anyway, like I said, we'll work on it when we can, right, Notch? So that is it for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Keep checking back here. Subscribe as I post videos throughout the week instead of doing longer videos once a week. So definitely subscribe so you don't miss out. And look for a Faux Friday post on my painting brick shawl soon. Cross your fingers. Let's hope. So anyway, I'm going to get going and see you soon. Bye. Say bye-bye, Nacho. Say bye-bye.